Chip Brown, Orange 247, joins us. It's been a while since we had Chip on the show with David Smoke, Craig Smoke. Chip, thank you, buddy. What's been the reaction in Austin about that number? And was it immediately, no, we're not doing that? What was, you got some intel on that?
Yeah. So, and Kirk's a great reporter. I think he took a CBS sports story by John Talty. Talty interviewed Curt Cignetti, the head coach at Indiana, and Curt Cignetti said he thought the salaries could go to, or the roster payroll could go to 35 million to 40 million. And then he listed some schools that he thought were in that neighborhood: Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Texas Tech, Notre Dame, and Miami. And so, Kirk, with Curt Cignetti saying Texas, 35 to 40 million, whatever. But in talking to the, people with knowledge of Texas's NIL spending, they're not in that neighborhood and don't plan to be. I think one of the things that, they've taken pride in is Steve Sarkisian being surgical in the transfer portal to fill a need, really wants to do it with the high school kids. But if there's a need, and, go to the portal. And Texas has done a good job of finding, student athletes who are maybe the best player on a bad team, convincing them that, hey, you come here, you get a chance to play for championships, great culture, city, all that. And so that they're not overpaying for talent. So I think, there was some angst at Texas about that, because of course that headline is going to stick, and it's all anyone's going to talk about during the year, Texas's $40 million roster, when I'm told it'll be, with the double dip, the salary rev share coming, probably going to be around 13, 14 million for, the Power Four schools for football. And then if you add in your collective, I'm told Texas will be, maybe right at 28 or 30 million. I know people are going to be like, oh, well, but it is a big difference. I mean, when you're talking about, if we're talking about, compensation for players.
Mm-hmm. Chip Brown with his 247 Sports. Thanks for your time. And Craig, question for Chip.
Chip, when I saw it, I actually didn't really blink. I mean, I just figured like, okay, yeah, I mean, it's kind of the Wild West these days. And especially when you count in all the factors that are going into it. I mean, did you balk at that? Did you find that to be an alarmingly high number? Or did you think like, well, that's maybe a little bit off, but somewhere in the neighborhood?
Well, I just wanted to see. I wanted to find out. So I, made the calls and in talking again to people with knowledge of the NIL spending at Texas, they were like, we're not in that neighborhood. Don't plan to be. They feel like Texas Tech might be spending more on its 2025 football roster right now than Texas is. All the talk about David Bailey, the pass rusher, John Talty even reported allegedly getting 2.5 million. I'm told Texas has never paid a student athlete $2 million in NIL money. So it's kind of strange, but Sarkisian, he said, I'm not going to pay some transfer to come in. We want to recruit good players and pay them more as they go through, as they develop, but don't want to bring in someone from the outside that, would be commanding big bucks and disrupt the culture of the locker room.
Well, and that's one of my questions, but also at the same time, what difference does it make? I know that you don't want to like have about a bunch, but Texas has stars. I mean, from the ultimate with Arch to all the others, Anthony Hill, et cetera. Is it one of those things that they feel like people will look at them differently if they win because of this report of 35 or 40 million? If you have it and it's there, why not spend it?
Yeah, I guess so. They want to. Plus, they don't want to give the wrong impression. The Texas legislature is always right in their backyard. Texas does lean on some state funding. Texas has a lot of critics in the legislature. They can put administrators through the paces. Well, what do you need our money for? You're paying your football roster $40 million. But the interesting thing about the quarterbacks is Quinn Ewers never got money from the Texas Collective, and neither has Arch Manning. Both of them, Quinn, I'm told, made about $6 million on top of the $1.4 million he got when he went to Ohio State in 3 seasons at Texas. And it was all from, his getting national brands, partnerships, Dr. Pepper, Hulu, Wrangler. And we know Arch Manning, Red Bull, Waymo, Panini America, they're banking on Arch, trying to get that relationship started early because, they're betting on the investment down the road.
Chip, I think too, and yeah, that's amazing for him, and have those opportunities now that the guys didn't have for so long. And on that, I think part of it too is you don't want to hear the storyline all year like Ohio State had to hear about their $20 million roster the entire time that they were winning games. But do you feel like people are still just so conditioned after decades of paying players? We don't do that now it's like you almost forget, no, you can do that and it's okay. You got to do it a certain way. But I think people are still kind of halfway in, halfway out on realizing that it's okay and it's not as big of a deal anymore.
Yeah, we are in crazy times. I mean, as Smokey can attest, for those of us who were around when SMU was maybe initiating NIL before it was legal, or not initiating, but they were maybe the most ostentatious about it, to be where we are now. And then to think that in 2014, Claudia Wilkin, the federal judge who's going to, sign off on this House settlement, advised schools pay each of your student athletes $5,000 a year for their name, image, and likeness. That would be a good place to start. Mm-hmm. And I remember Steve Patterson, one of the least effective administrators I've ever covered. He did 2 things for Texas. He got beer sales through at sporting events, and he did say, we need to pay these kids the $5,000 for name, image, and likeness, or it's going to be out of our control. And he was right. And that would have been a $2.5 million investment for every school to take care of every student athlete. And it might have kept the, state lawmakers from getting involved in clearing the way for this pay for play.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
And now that's like Colin Simmons, next year, not this year, but next year. That's probably just him alone will command something like that, right? And yeah, that's crazy how that would happen.
It's crazy, Chip. Had they done this 25, 20, 15, 30, it's nuts. We just had Ryan Mulvaney, who's an attorney, a sports law attorney, and he was talking about, they're paying for decades of stubbornness, arrogance, and that thought they were bulletproof. And they're about to pay this massive settlement. Okay, so UT, they've been on a nice run. Sark the first year, low growing pains. Then they were able to secure talent and more talent and more talent. Where would you compare where they are right now with the football program in almost cruise control compared to maybe the early to mid when Mac and UT were threatening to win national titles a couple of 2 or 3 times that decade? I'm not trying to compare them to 05, but where are they in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, Smokey, they're built better from the inside out. Steve Sarkisian's done a great job of identifying, he and Kyle Flood, his offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, have done a great job of identifying offensive linemen and developing them into difference makers. And now we're seeing offensive linemen get drafted left and right. Remember, there were zero offensive linemen drafted between 2008 and when Connor Williams went to the Dallas Cowboys, 18. None. that if people want to know where Texas was off the grid in the wilderness for, 10 years, that's where they were. They were not built from the inside out. Even that 09 team that played for the national title, that was not it was a functioning offensive line. But Colt McCoy, they rolled the pocket, they moved him, he ran. He and Jordan Shipley deserve a medal for what they got accomplished offensively that year. Trey Newton was the leading rusher on that team at like 500 yards. So they're built better from the inside out. I think, there's an identity on defense that's improving. Pete Kwiatkowski wants to be a defensive coordinator. Mac had guys moving on up. Gene Chizik, Will Muschamp. So, Mac was having to, restock on the defensive side, but with Sarkisian calling the plays on offense, he's able to, attract top skill players because he's sent them to the league. He's developed quarterbacks. So I think they're better positioned. I know they have one conference championship, the 2012 title 2 years ago. But they woulda, coulda, shoulda won the SEC this year, make a couple field goals. So I think they're better positioned.
So Arch Manning clearly is the name that everybody's hearing, man. How would you compare just the buzz? I mean, you've been around Austin a long time. All these number one recruits they've had in the past, the Vince Youngs, the Chris Sims. I mean, and that's just quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers was a big damn deal when they got him back from Ohio State. But what's it? Is it like unique in its own way? The Arch Manning buzz that's leading into this season.
Yeah, I mean, look, your grandfather was the number 2 overall pick in 71. Your uncles were both number 1 overall picks. I mean, the one thing I really like about Arch is he gets it. He's in on the joke, and I don't know how many people know that his younger brother, Hyde, is a freshman at Texas, and that dude's a comedian. And Arch, kind of leans on him to have a normal college life because Hyde's in a fraternity, and he's like, I'm living my best life. I interviewed him, did a story over at Horns 24/7. Talked to Cooper Manning too. Free story, Google it. I think it's a good read. And so the hysteria is nuts, but Arch is committed to being a normal guy and going out with his friends, even though everybody comes up to him, hey, can I get a selfie? And, he'd much rather not be doing that, but it's off the charts, but he's a good guy. He gets it. And like Hyde, I asked him, Arch, what was he, like growing up? And he's like, he's the same guy who, doesn't know how to operate a microwave, So it's, they're a really well-adjusted family.
Chip, it's amazing how they turned around. You mentioned about how they were not built on the inside out. Texas fans sometimes get a little bit not sensitive to this, but when they were able to get those 6 offensive linemen that very first year with whatever that was, the collective, was that, and did I miss, I don't know if you said that, was that what set the table for where they are year in and year out? That gave them the foundation and the anchor?
That was clutch. I mean, that was a tipping point. That Pancake Factory popped up on December 5th, and signing day was like a week later.
Yep.
You had Kelvin Banks, who had decommitted. You had Cam Williams, who decommitted. You had some big free agents out there. And that's when, the Rick Vasquez and came up with this Pancake Factory, $50,000 for each offensive lineman, as long as they do, community service stuff. That helped. And, now I don't even know if you have to do anything to get the money, but other than play. But yeah, that was big, Smokey. I mean, they had 7 offensive linemen in that class. They all stayed until Malik Agbo just transferred out in this last portal window. But, Neto Umazulu, obviously Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, but Neto Umazulu, Cole Hudson, and DJ Campbell are going to be 3 starters on that offensive line from that offensive line haul in 2022.
Hey, man, thank you very much, Chip. Appreciate the time, the knowledge. As always, good to see you with Chip Brown, Horns 247, with us on a little clarification on what he's hearing on the story yesterday that we discussed a little bit today as well